Let me reintroduce myself in case we have any new joiner. I'm Iara Sousa, and I will be leading the session for today. So today, our session will be around ensuring a resilient, nature-positive future. So let me just bring a bit of background. From the inception, the PSI has recognized that nature as a material factor in sustainability. So over the past decades, we have worked on projects from illegal, unreported and irregular fishing to plastic pollution and UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So the PSI basically work and it ended up leading to development of the first world ESG guides for life and non-life insurance, as well as okay, so back to it. So as I was saying, and we managed with all the background work to deliver the first ESG guides for non-life and life insurance, as well as the Nature Positive Insurance Series in 2021, and a briefing paper in 2023. So in 2024, we launched the PSI Working Group for Nature, which today includes over 40 insurance companies, brokers, and technical partners. The working group is working globally, but with local realities in mind. And the high-profile, high-level work plan of the working group is basically first to define priorities for the insurers. Second, mainstream the nature-related risks and opportunities assessments, as well as embedding nature in risk management and underwriting, and scaling up support for transition to nature-positive insurance. So in 2024, the PSI Working Group launched a guide titled Insurance for a Resilient Nature-Positive Insurance. And today we will explore what that means in practice, how it begins to show up in terms of underwriting, product development, and stakeholder discussions. So let's jump in now to our panel discussion. Today I'm joined by three leading experts from the region. Wakesho Sonje, she is the ESG specialist at ICEA and a core contributor to the PSI working group. She played the role as vice chair of the working group. And then we have as well Christine Arandi. She is the ESG lead at Britam Group, and with extensive experience on market-driven sustainability strategies. Please take your place. And we have as well Noleen Moyo. She is the head of sustainability, data and analytics at ZimRe Holdings, one of the most active voices in data transformation and ESG alignment in Southern Africa. So, welcome. So, I would like to hand over now to Sonje, because she will be the one kicking us off as the vice chair of the working group, because we want to have a feeling of the work development and all the steps that they will taking through throughout the working group discussions. So Caroline plays an important role when it comes to it, and we want to hear from you the theory of change, the priorities, and we want to have a bit of insights. So I will ask to have the presentation displayed, please. Meanwhile, we'll have our presenter. Thank you. So if you want, as I mentioned before, we launched a guideline, and if you want to get more insights about the guideline, please feel free to scan the QR code that we have in our slides, and you will be having access directly to the full report that we have and get a bit more of insights. So now over to you, Sonje.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, as has been mentioned that we scan the QR code, go through the report. It's pretty much self-explanatory, and it factors in, all the insurance space, all the insurance actors, the entire value chain, and it also looks at, it gives priorities for insurance firms and in terms of the way we are different. So it factors in your locality, and also maybe if it is your size of insurance, and these are just priorities on how they can be customized at your respective insurance space. So anyway, this, as Iara has mentioned, is first of its kind of this guidance, and it's getting us to basically appreciate nature as our key asset, because most of the times we do not really view nature as an asset, but maybe it's time we need to start viewing nature as an asset, just like any other assets. Maybe we can go to the next slide. So as Iara has mentioned, as we are working on developing this, because it was a number of insurance firms across the world. So just to come up with intersections between nature and the insurance space. And so we saw quite a number of intersections, because I'm sure if you're familiar with the TNFD, you know about the DEROs, the dependencies, risk, opportunities, and impacts of our businesses on nature. So, but this one now was just focusing on insurance. And then I'll give like maybe a few examples of how the insurance space intersects with nature, just because in the interest of time. So for instance, one, of course, the entire value chain of insurance firm intersects with nature. So whether it is at the place of claims management, whether it is a place of where we're interacting with suppliers, for instance, or of course our customers themselves, because we are there insuring the customers who are then directly interfacing with nature. So that's why I mentioned the whole entire value chain of insurance is actually intersecting with nature. And then of course the loss of nature, or any negative impact on nature in the long run, gets to affect the insurance farmer. So because if say you have a manufacturing organization that you're insuring, and they are highly dependent on nature, like let's say highly dependent on water, and if there's loss of that, then that risk directly impacts your insurance firm, and it's translated or transferred to you. So also there are also intersections. The report looks at intersections of both the traditional insurance and of course the life and health insurance. As I said, I'll just be skimming through this, but you can read more of the details into this, because just of interest of time. And after now looking at the dependencies, risk, opportunities, and impacts, then the report came up with priorities, which, as I mentioned, an insurance firm can look at things to do basically to work towards being a nature positive insurer. So as I mentioned, these priorities actually can be customized to your insurance firm. Something which is most feasible to your insurance firm. So some of the priorities are, like risk advisory and risk management services. So using insurers' expertise, of course, in our risk analytics. The session before here, we were reminded of our role as insurers, the risk, the three roles as insurers, and one of them, of course, is on risk management. So it's looking at that. It's also looking at stakeholder engagement. The first point I mentioned, our intersection, is on the entire value chain of insurance, and of course that means you're dealing with different stakeholders whether it's the suppliers, whether it is the customers, whether it is the brokers, the agents, that entire value chain. And so how are we engaging with our stakeholders to ensure that we are all speaking a common language towards being nature positive? Because as I said before, it's supposed to be shared value. Shared responsibility towards shared value. So of course, okay, I'd also mentioned, of course, the clients also fall into the part of the stakeholder management. Part of the stakeholder engagement. And then some examples for priority actions for life and health insurers. As risk managers, to ensure that how are we creating awareness for our customers with regards to health and how nature can actually affect their health. Because I remember, like in the previous session, we talked about being proactive as opposed to being reactive. So how can we ensure that we're taking care of nature, which then in turn does not, it lessens the likability of the risk to materialize, which now will cause most of these diseases, case in point like respiratory diseases or all these other diseases which are actually linked to negative impacts to nature. And then I think we can go to the next slide on the theory of change. I think I preempted this slide. Yeah, so we had a theory of change, which was sort of guiding us on the sectors or the areas which, as an insurer, that we should look at. So we see there we are talking about capacity building, of course, and culture. Of course, as insurers, most of the times, we get this information that we are financiers. We are very good in the financial space, but we don't have the nature information and how to link it up. Initially, as I mentioned, that I'm not an insurer. Now for me, I'm an environmental scientist. I was thrown into insurance. So how to match this? So of course, we all have to have that capacity building and to understand how, to move forward and how to match the two. And then, of course, strategy and governance, it plays a key role because, we have to have buy-in all the way from board level, if I may say, all the way from the top level to, for lack of a better word, grassroots level. So everyone actually understands what you're doing. Of course, the board acts as, providing oversight, but the actual implementers are the people who are working day to day. So that. And then, of course, risk analysis and management. We are very good at that as insurers, but now just to ensure that we're integrating the nature aspect into that. Of course, I mentioned before engagement with all our stakeholders, the entire value chain, to engage with them, because you find information here talking about even how we're engaging with, whether it is also our brokers, because most of the times, again, as insurers, we get our businesses through the brokers. So we also need them to speak a common language for them to understand what is the trajectory we are taking with regards to nature, so that by the time they're even bringing that business up to us, then they've already begun this conversation with the customers out there. So, and then ESG risk management and underwriting, of course, integrating nature into underwriting. I know probably most insurers here now are already integrating if it's climate change, but climate change and nature are just two sides of the same coin. So now just to ensure that also we're integrating nature into that, and risk transfer solutions and products, and also all the way to claims management and suppliers engagement. In the claims management, looking at things like how to promote circularity, circular economy, things like if it's on the motor space, to promote things like repair over, buying new products and such things. So yeah, this is what informed the theory of change. So looking into it, and as I've said, get into more details in the report. It's actually self-explanatory, and as I mentioned, these are just priorities. It's sort of a guidance on how we can embark on this journey so that we all, achieve common goals. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sonje. So it's really great to see that there is a pathway and there is a way to integrate nature into our risk management decision. If, as she mentioned, given the triple role of the insurance industry, so it is something that we really need to take into account when dealing with our process. And I'm pretty sure as well that it will support in terms of product innovation and deliver better value to clients. So now we'll stop a bit for a second to see if there is any comment, anyone with any insight or someone that is already working on nature-related risks, or even a question that is raising from the presentation that that Sonje just delivered. It's quiet, so move. Okay, so let's now kick off a bit and discuss to see if we get a bit more of insights, and of course we'll have the takeaways from our audience. So I'll start with you, Sonje. Building on your role in the PSI working group, how is your institution starting to bring some of the nature positive actions into practice? In particular within life and health insurance. What early steps or internal reflections have you seen that might be valuable for others working across the industry as well? Over to you.
Okay. Actually for us, in fact now it's like an opportune time because we were actually doing our strategy now for 3 years, 2025 to 2027. And so now we became very, very deliberate with integrating nature aspects into the strategy. So the whole, the whole area or everything about the strategy, which looks at the entire operation of the business. So one is the strategy and governance. So what we said, and this is one thing I've been mentioning even when we were doing when we were part of the working group, not to say that now we're overhauling the entire system and having a new board or a new committee which will look at nature, but no, just maybe the existing committee which is risk, for instance, which maybe initially was actually providing oversight for ESG and any other matters of ESG, now to just be very deliberate on nature aspects and to look at that. And also to ensure that even at the board level, we have capacity building, that we have people who understand nature matters, because that's the only way they can provide oversight over it. Because then if they're not understanding it, then it will just be more of we are reporting at the board, but they don't really understand and they can't ask the proper questions. So we are doing that. And also capacity building. The previous session talked about the Nairobi Declaration for Sustainable Insurance. One of the positive things about that, they give some technical assistance to insurance firms to help them in implementation and integration of sustainability. So working on their strategy and actually monitoring the implementation. And we actually monitored at a monthly level. It actually feels at times like you're in school with a report card every month. So they helped us with that technical assistance and the capacity building, as I mentioned previously, all the way from the board level to the C-suite and to the actual implementers. So that has helped a lot. And then another thing is on product design. And also when it comes to product design, again we say, because I know the entire process of product design, you have to come up with a new product, and then of course go through the internal checks, and after that then it has to go to the regulators and to be approved. But how about we thought of, there could be existing products that we have that we can enhance them now to just incorporate nature into them. So we also are looking at that, and in fact soon we are going to have a meeting again still with the technical assistance which I mentioned about, to look at our existing products and just how to enhance them so that they are working towards being nature positive. And as part of that also, I say before we integrate some of these things, let's say into underwriting, because at times it can seem like a daunting task. And then if you understand before, let me give my background a bit, sorry. I worked for the longest in a banking sector, and when I came to insurance, it's a bit different. And they say the banking sector are easier or way ahead, if I may say, with integrating ESG in their processes, like in responsible banking, if I may say. But you see, banking, if you're giving out a loan, it's a long-term thing. But insurance, most of the times, not unless it's life, it's a short term. Maybe it's a year or so. And then it's cutthroat competition. So then how do you integrate all these things in underwriting, the ESG and also the nature aspect? So how we're looking at it is saying, can we start with, and that's what the approach we've taken at ICEA, can we look at industries and sectors which we are seeing like to be to be more at risk with regards to nature, and start with that. And you know, do it progressively. As we keep building our internal capacity, then we can keep saying we progress that and have more sectors and more industries to go through, you know, to integrate now and nature underwriting. I mean, to integrate nature in their underwriting process. So as a few early steps, as you're saying, reflections stand out. So as you say, board level awareness, as I say, we need to have that, and it's not just at the board level, but to have a buy-in. And I would not say just buy-in at the organization itself, but the entire value chain. And that's one thing we are looking at, even now before we fully integrate these things into underwriting, and also in our supply chain, to meet our stakeholders, to meet our suppliers, and to not, you know, to slap them and tell them now going forward, we're not going to be working with you, but create that awareness for them to understand that there are risks and opportunities with regards to nature, so that they appreciate this, and they're the ones who actually will be asking for it. And we are doing the same approach also for customers, for them to understand, so that it no longer becomes that if we do this, then we may lose out on customers. No, they're the ones who will actually be understanding, and they'll be seeing that, oh, there's a way that you know, they can benefit from this. It will help them reduce the, you know, like if used, for instance, nature-based solutions, it will help them to reduce the likability of a risk materializing. Yeah, so I think I can stop there for now.
Thank you, Sonje. It's really glad that you mentioned the fact that small decisions, small changes really lead to a shift within the organization. And it's what sustainability is all about. Small moves towards what we are looking forward to. So let's move a bit, and I'll move now to Christine. So in East Africa, we see diverse ecosystems and fast-changing urban environments. From your experience across the region, what's one area where insurance could better connect with the nature-positive outcomes, whether through client engagement, risk understanding, or how the products are designed? Over to you, Christine.
Can hear me, right? So good afternoon, my name is Christine. Thank you for this opportunity. So I don't know whether to say East Africa alone, but I want to say Africa. I think we've experienced firsthand the impact of climate change. And I believe climate change doesn't come alone, it comes in triplet. In terms of what's happening in climate change has a nexus impact on the health. And in addition to that, it also impacts biodiversity and nature. So as an insurance company, I work in Britam Holdings. It is a Pan-African company. We're in 7 countries within Africa, going to 8, very widespread, not all of us. I think a part of us are in the northern part, Malawi, Mozambique, southern part, Malawi, Mozambique. We're also in Rwanda, South Sudan. So it's also multi-faced challenges, but the common trigger is one. So in terms, there's quite a bit that we can do as insurance, to be very honest. We need to think, stop thinking conventional and look at how we are designing our products, like Sonje has indicated. We need to factor in the pricing model. So at the point of the pricing of the products that we are rolling out, we need to factor in risk aspects. And in this case, stretch it further into nature aspect. I know with the coming in of new reporting standards, the IFRS is one that focuses on sustainability related risks, as well as IFRS is 2 on climate related risks. We need to also bring in nature as something that impacts the profit and loss of a company. So I'm thinking of not just one but various themes. I've been tasked to focus on one, so I'll try and just skip it to that one and sneak in maybe 2 more. So there's the aspect of product innovation, the kind of products, as I said, what are we designing? There's the aspect of how are we pricing our products, which brings in understanding risks that are nature related, and looking for ways to mitigate that and address that and turn the risk into an opportunity. Then there's the aspect of who are we designing for. We need to understand the other parties on the other end, so bringing in the aspect of transformative client engagement. So when we look at product designing, we've talked about parametric insurance products that will enable us then to ensure that we are looking at a proactive nature where we are able to pay out, because you'll find most of the clients, in this case when I talk about clients, I'm looking at SMEs, MSMEs, small-scale farmers who have, of course, crops and livestock. We are looking at even the vulnerable who are affected. Could be in the urban or rural areas. So we're looking at the youth, we're looking at women. So how do we ensure that as insurers we are not being reactive, where we are paying when an incident has happened, or when a disaster happens, we are looking out for financial aid from, IMF, WHO, Red Cross, for those of us who know Red Cross in various countries, but to be more proactive, so paying out based on triggers. So that's where parametric insurance comes in. We also need to look at green covers. So offering policies that incentivize. So if we have clients that have embraced biodiversity pro habits, are we still going to let them pay, the same premiums as anyone else? As much as we're also looking at incentivizing other insurance covers, say for motor vehicle, we've seen companies that are rolling out, if you have good driving skills, the second year you're not paying the same premium, you're given, do I call it, like you don't pay for 1 month, for example. What are we doing for those in the agricultural sector, for those who are embracing afforestation, and for those who've embraced biodiversity consciousness into the various sectors? So we are looking at the crop, as I said, we are looking at agriculture and farming. Then thirdly, we need to partner. Partnership is very key. I think we've talked about this all about public-private partnerships. We need to partner with local organizations. We need to partner with government so that then we are able to pilot insurance cases that are conservative, have integrated conservative models. On the aspect of transformative client engagement, I'm a Christian, so in the Bible the Bible says, my people suffer because of lack of knowledge. It's important for us to create awareness. I believe that in sustainability, it's not about talking, and for us to see change, there has to be behavior change and change of mindset. And how do you get to change mindset of people? By making them understand the impact and how it relates to each and every different person. So then they're able to pick up that practice. So in this case, we need to embed nature positive behavior when we do policy communication. So for example, insurance companies, including us, we have insurance literacy programs. We need to put in as a key agenda item, bringing in the aspect of creating awareness on nature positive behavior. At the point of when we have claim interactions, can we use that as a touch point for us to sensitize that specific client on what they need to embrace, what technology they need to integrate, how can we support, even as insurance company, bringing in the aspect of, again, partnerships and collaborations. And finally, risk understanding and modeling. So we need to also, we talk about integration, and I think Sonje, you mentioned that integrating geospatial biodiversity data in underwriting. But do we have that data? If you can attest, all of us, one of the biggest challenges that we have is credible and quality data that can be able to enable us make predictive decision, predictive analysis, and the right decisions. So do we have the right data? So one of the things, again, partnership, we need to partner with for us, we rolled out a product on parametric insurance. We had to partner with the meteorological data station in Kenya so that we are able then to study when is it likely to rain. As I said, you have to integrate that satellite aspect, bring in data which historical to be able to predict the future. So there's the aspect again of partnership. Then we also need to include ecosystem service dependencies when we are doing our risk pricing. So just a question, like how many of us as insurance are able to do, to integrate that, to have a catastrophe risk model at the point of the product design? Do we bring it in when it happens and we are reactive and we're talking about losses? Are the regulators aware even to integrate that when they're setting solvency benchmarks that company needs to attest to remain credible? So honestly, I think there's quite a bit that we can do as insurance. But I'll just talk about, as I said, the 333. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Christine. It's really one of the points, the takeaways that I picked from your speech now is the fact that partnerships are important. Let's break the silos and let's think sustainability has collaboration, sustainability has one, and we break all possible competition and all the aspects that we know that the industry sometimes face. So let's move a bit further, and I will have Noleen now. And Noleen, based on what you are seeing in the region, what's one way the industry can start supporting more nature-aware decisions on the ground, especially in high risks or underserved areas? Over to you, Noleen.
Thank you, Iara. I work at an organization that does quite a lot of things. We're a diversified investment company based in Zimbabwe, but with operations across the Southern African region, particularly in the SADC area. And we recognize, I think, that by building resilience within nature and the communities that we serve, that this in turn creates sustainability and long-term value for our business as well as all the stakeholders that we work with. And I think nature-positive insurance solutions offer an opportunity not only to protect but to also regenerate ecosystems that are vital to our economies. And this is coming from the various climate change weather conditions that we've been experiencing. And like you mentioned, in the various regions that we operate, we've seen quite a lot of devastation from recent cyclones and droughts that we're experiencing, which has heavily impacted our business as well. And I think a bit of background on how ZRHL came about was it was created by the government of Zimbabwe over 40 years ago as a reinsurance company, and it was created as a vehicle to drive infrastructure development within Zimbabwe. So if you go into our major cities or towns within Zimbabwe, you'll probably find either a building or a commercial area or residential area that was built or created by the ZRHL group. So in realizing that we know our role as insurers and what our role in building the country or building any country that we operate in. So coming off of that background, that also feeds into how we as a group are looking to give back to the community or to build in terms of nature positive decisions and how we're going forward with that. And I think through our subsidiaries and the various countries we're in, we've seen how climate change or the changes in nature have affected your underserved communities, or how biodiversity is changing and being affected by all of these risks. And the biggest question I think that we've been grappling with is, how do we as the insurance industry support more nature-aware decisions, as well as make more decisions that impact nature in a positive way. And one of the ways that we're doing it, I think, is integrating ecosystem services into our product development, and I think my colleagues have touched on that quite extensively, so I won't go into that, but it's for example, integrating rainfall patterns, soil health into products that we offer in terms of insurance and all of that. And particularly creating a culture of sustainability, because as long as we don't have a culture of sustainability and it's not ingrained within the communities or the people that we're serving, it doesn't serve a purpose. I think the insurance penetration rate in I think Southern Africa is about 2 to 5%. And whilst we're still fighting to teach people, create more awareness around insurance and that area, we're now trying to also speak about sustainability or speaking about nature, or trying to teach people how to be more observant of how they deal with nature. So I think that is also another aspect that we need to look to, that is building a culture that promotes sustainability, promotes nature positive decisions at an individual level. And whilst also speaking to that, as institutional investors, we've done quite a lot of investing, and insurance, I think insurers direct where a lot of the capital goes or where capital flows. And I think those were some of the conversations that we had earlier in the morning. And I think at ZRH we're trying to build a lot of ESG-linked investment opportunities for the industry, but also that we participate in. And an example is building sustainable infrastructure and climate resilient property development through one of our recent, I think it's not a recent baby, but we call it the Eagle Real Estate Trust, which is the vehicle that we're using to champion a lot of these initiatives. And and also, whilst we're there, it's also touching into ecosystem preservation, because I think with climate risk, climate change, and all of that, a lot of the ecosystems, be it your things like your wetlands or animal ecosystems, all of those have been disrupted. So those are some of the other things we're also looking into in terms of regenerating and also trying to conserve. And I think one of the last points I'll speak to is traditional actuarial models. I think when we now go into underwriting and product development, they don't really cater for biodiversity change and all of those. And I think those are conversations as an industry that we need to start having as well, incorporating that and also the nature aspect in the models that we're creating and how we're doing our product development.
Thank you, Noleen. Very insightful speech. And what I would like now with the audience is that as we go back to our office and we both will go back to our workplaces, we take something with us, like What are we doing in terms of integrated nature? How are we planning to advance the agenda? And what are the measures, quick measures that we can put in place as a company so that we see at least, because as most of our panelists say, those are small steps and we need to start with those small steps. So let's think, let's reflect, what can we do going back home in order to change, in order to integrate? And we see at least the agenda moving a bit more forward. So I'll go back to my panelists now. And we talked about climate shocks and we agreed about the interconnection with nature. So now, how are climate risks like drought, floods, highlighting the urgency to better understand and integrate nature-related risks into insurance risk models and client conversations? So in your experience, how can insurance industry use these events to frame the value of nature-based solutions? So each one of you gives your input so that we have a bit of your insights.
I see you're looking at me. So in Africa, we've all experienced firsthand, if it's not ourselves, our relatives, but I believe all of us, what we talk about as the reality shocks. So these are floods, cyclones, prolonged drought, earthquakes. You know, we've not yet gotten the heat wave, but I know in some aspect, in some areas, they can say like in the coastal regions, say in Kenya, it gets extremely hot. So we can agree that there's a link between, if the ecological degradation happens, then there's also vulnerability from a financial aspect for companies, yeah. So for me, I think one of the key things that we need to do as an insurance company is to evolve, to stop, to take the risk, as was discussed in the previous session, to stop just thinking the conventional way, to stop waiting for someone else to take the risk. Let A start and then we can see what happens. Instead, come together and collaboratively take this risk, and let's evolve our models in terms of risk models. What does our enterprise risk management look like? What do we need to update? Is it aligned to the emerging risks? Let's not just focus on what is happening right now and embrace a proactive nature. The other key thing is we need to look at our assumptions, which are very critical when we are doing product design, which are very critical when we are doing our strategies as businesses, which are also very critical when we know who we are putting together as working groups in the various initiatives that we have to do as a business as usual. So we need to stop looking at climate extremes just as disasters. For me, I think what has happened becomes a teacher. What do I learn? And how can we be better prepared before the next one happens? Thanks.
Thank you.
To add on to that, I think as insurance was almost uniquely positioned to influence a lot of the change, because I'll touch on incentives that you spoke about earlier. And I think the incentive for insurance is mostly risk mitigation and claims management, because I think for us as a business, our claims have been very high for the last 2-3 years because of what we've been experiencing. And so if we're not taking a proactive approach to go to the market and make sure we're trying to have the markets we're operating and being more aware or how we mitigate those risks, we are the ones who are going to suffer also ultimately. So I think it goes two ways. We have an incentive to try and reduce our claims or mitigate risks, but also on the individuals, the incentive could be lower premiums, or the incentive could be your financial protection, and also how insurance can actually protect you or protect your assets from all that is happening around us.
I think the cross-sector dependencies has really caused or progressed these conversations for nature and nature-based solutions in the industry, if I may say. Because of course we know nature loss is compounding climate risk, and vice versa. Of course we climate change, and then it's worsening on the nature and also. And I'll give an example by saying that now it's not only, in fact, the insurance firms that are even, if I may say, going to create awareness out there, but out of a cost perspective, the clients themselves are sort of asking for this or demanding for this. And they are going ahead to almost find solutions for themselves. I'll give an example of recently we were in a nature conversation, and a good example was given of, I believe it's Brazil, in one of the countries in South America. And they are talked about, a wetland. Of course, we know all the important things that wetlands do and the ecological functions that they provide. And one of them, of course, is to ensure that there's availability of clean water. So this company that actually depends, of course, on water. One of their key, ingredients in their manufacturing is water. And so, when we have all these conversations of saying that we look at nature as an asset, then who pays for it? For instance, if we say that we want to improve the mangroves and take care of them, or the coral reefs, and so who will pay for that insurance when it comes to that? Who actually pays the premium? Is it the local organization? Is it the government and all? But in this case, which I'm talking about, imagine it's that organization who actually went out, looked for insurance to pay for premium to take care of the wetlands, so that if a payout comes, in case of a risk materializing, then when the payout comes, they go to repair or take care of that wetland. So as I'm saying, we are actually now seeing even the clients being proactive, because they're actually facing these firsthand, all these nature risks. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonje. So now we'll turn to the audience, and I would like to know if there is any broker. Okay, there's someone here first. Please, your name, organization.
Thank you so much. I'm Alessandra Garbero, lead economist at IFAD for the Near East, North Africa and Central Asia division. I have a question related to the data, because I guess now data is increasingly available, AI is more accessible. I mean, maybe can elaborate a bit on the barriers for updating these models, because it should be relatively easier. The second question I have is actually because IFAD invests in rural smallholders, actually we used to call them the last mile, now they're becoming the first mile, so the socially excluded, the vulnerable. They cannot afford the insurance product, so can you elaborate a bit on the solutions in this field? How can we make insurance more accessible? Over, thank you.
Thank you. So over to you.
I think I can maybe touch a bit on the data side of things, because I think it's a passion project also. I think historically data hasn't, particularly in Africa, or maybe speaking for Zimbabwe or the regions that we've operated in, data hasn't really been important. So other companies would have a whole room filled with paper that's got records going back 20, 30 years. And for us to actually have data that works, you need to have data that's of quality. So only now are people waking up to actually holding data important and trying to actually have proper data governance that actually gives us quality data, not only for AI or everything else, but because we need it for all our predictive analytics, or when we need to have our prescriptive insurance, we really need that data to actually be of high quality. So I think the problem that we've had historically is that data hasn't been as important as it should have been. So we're almost starting from a back foot and trying to catch up with where the rest of the world has been. Yet it's something we should have been looking at quite extensively before, being very important. So I don't know if I answered your question.
So from my experience, I look at it from two angles. So the first angle is a challenge we had in terms of when we're rolling out our products that are parametric. So you need to, if it's flood-based, you need data that is past-related data, which will help you in predicting the patterns as well as forecasting. You also need data to appreciate the water level. So I look at a project that we had in an area within Kenya where flooding will happen when it has rained in the region that is on a high level. So the water flows to the river overflows and it reaches a certain level, and that's when that specific, it's called Tana River, gets fully flooded. So accessing that data, say for the meteorological station especially, is being held by the government. So even the bulky process of getting into an understanding with the government to obtain that data was not easy for us. The other aspect was they had a lot of paperwork. There's no digital data. Most of our governments, I don't know in this region, but I look at East Africa, they're still embracing paperwork. So most of the data was archived in hard copies. Then we cannot set up our own stations because of how expensive it is, the infrastructure in terms of even the satellite that you need for that. So that was the data I was talking about that will help if you want to roll out a product that is going to be sustainable in terms of when there is drought or when there is likelihood to be flood. So this could be a flood insurance or a parametric crop-based or livestock-based. The other aspect of data is just data that we need even for sustainability in terms of peer benchmarking or learning, or even, for example, like I said, we're in different countries within Africa. So beyond the different regulations that are not aligned, sometimes there's data that you get that cannot be shared, say, with Kenya, where our headquarters is based, because of regulations or where the data is stored within that specific country. So that is another key challenge. So, which goes back to the aspect of data pool sharing, like we talked about, where even as Africa, regardless of where you're based, you're able to go to a central place and access that data. So you talked about how do we make insurance affordable. So when I look at disruption, I think we talked about this, and innovation, I think it's one of the things, and then understanding the emerging markets. That is what makes us ask the question, how come we are not able to ensure that insurance is penetrating within Africa? We actually, I think it's 3% across compared globally, penetration. So besides the fact that they say there's lack of awareness, they don't trust insurance, there's the aspect of affordability. So for me, I think that's where the microinsurance aspect comes in. So micro disrupts the status quo. You're able to partner with another company. For example, us as an insurance company, we partnered with Telcom. And when a client purchases, say, airtime, they have an option to purchase a very simple, how much is 20 Kenya shillings in dollars? I'm trying to convert from my currency to dollars. Very little for that specific duration. So it could be maybe 24 hours. If you're taking a taxi from point A to B, it's tied to the app that you're requesting the taxi, and you have an option to pay as little as $1. for that duration of the specific trip. So there's that aspect of having strategic, impactful partnerships. And this makes us go beyond insurance company. We have to look at telcos, we have to look at the transport industry. We are trying to see how do we even get into other industries beyond what we used to, banks and all. The other thing is bundling. So once you get into these partnerships, are we able to get bundled insurance? So can I have 1,000 shillings, like when you go to a supermarket. I want to buy milk, I want to buy bread, I want to buy 1, 2, 3. So can we bundle, if you're taking a product for agriculture, can you bundle it with health? Or if you're taking a product for life, can you have it with the funeral insurance cover and hospitalization? So there's that aspect, how much will it cost, who can we partner? So for us to make it affordable, also bearing in mind that as much as we want to have purpose-led businesses, it still has to talk about profits. We need to look at strategic, impactful collaborations, which is ongoing. Embracing or adopting to the emerging markets. I hope that gives an aspect. I don't know, Sonje, if you have anything to add.
Thank you. No, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Just a second.
Good afternoon. My name is Nogari from the African Development Bank. My question is around capacity development for these nature-based insurance products. You mentioned the need to understand and invest in pricing, more accurate pricing, better quality, product development, etc. To what extent are you seeing investments in capacity building, and what do you think is required to push the insurance industry to that, more towards that?
Thank you. Can you have a quick answer to it, please?
All of us, I think, can give a comment on that. So capacity building is a huge challenge across. So what are we doing, or what can be done? So one of the things for us, say for nature, and I think it's because we are a beneficiary, we are a member of the African Nature and Capital Alliance. So by virtue of the fact that we've become members within this specific group, as well as the Nairobi Declaration on Sustainable Insurance, we are able to get into working groups, but you'll find that majority of the guys who are taking us through are consultants from not in Africa, to be very honest. So I think the onus is on us to take up the challenge, to transfer the skills, and that's why I said, and I keep preaching and saying, sustainability is not about competition, it's about collaboration. So when I'm with another insurance company, I'll not look at them as competitors, but I'm willing to share what we've learned. So there's still quite a bit that needs to be done, a lot, to be very honest, because we are now leveraging on knowledge that is not customized to the problems or the landscape within Africa. With the hope that, and investments beyond that coming from external support, there's also the internal investment. As I'll be very honest, that there also needs to be continuous engagement and appreciation of leadership from the top, for them to be able to support and set aside budgets that are going to enable us get the right software, get on board the right tools, as well as train teams internally, or just enhance that skill sharing or transfer skills. So there's a lot that we need to do, both internally as organizations and also leveraging on the different organizations that are there.
Thank you, Christine. I really hope that it covered everything. Sorry, we are running out of time. I know that we still have a question, right? So what I will do, we'll take your question and then we'll take it outside and we'll keep the discussion, because there is another session that needs to. You just introduce yourself, your name, your question, and then we wrap the session. At least we have a big takeaway.
Thank you. My name is Danford. I am from Coastal Biotech. Lavien presented what we do in the morning. And my question is centered around the tipping points So climate change is on the path to reach its tipping points, whereby the systems are going to reorganize and they cannot return back to normal, even if the drivers of this change are removed. So there are areas that have been identified, like the Greenland ice sheets, the Western Antarctic ice sheets, and for example, the coral reefs die-offs that are happening. For example, the Indian Ocean is the ocean with the highest number of coral reefs under the risk of hypoxia. So these are the tipping points in which when we reach certain levels, we won't be able to go back to normal, even if no matter what mitigation we do, we will never go back to how things were before. Now, if you consider, there are places that have not been classified as approaching the tipping points. For example, the wildfires that have been happening in Los Angeles or in Jerusalem this previous week. These are not part of the tipping points, but insurance companies have been already fleeing from these places, like in Los Angeles. Now, have you thought of a tipping point in terms of climate risk? Are we heading there? And are you going to stand with us, insurance companies, or, because we have seen an example already in the wildfires. Thank you.
Thank you for your insightful question and comments. So as I said, we'll take it out and we keep the discussions outside. Now I will thank everyone for their attendance, and please let's keep it up, let's keep the agenda, and thank you for all.